So, ladies, I am sorry to have to bring you this news. In hopes that things would have gotten better, the fact of the matter is we're seeing signs that things are just getting worse. And gentlemen, don't you go anywhere because when it comes to matters like these, even though they are labeled as a woman's problem, when you look at the core of the issue, it is really a societal problem. And I've done other topics that also were red flags about how women are being targeted. But these new evolving issues or incidents are really alarming that things are in fact continuing to get worse. And without some type of measures, I am really concerned that it will continue to escalate. Have you guys heard about the incidents in the Dollar Tree stores? If you haven't heard about the incidents in the Dollar Tree stores, let me break it down for you. But before I do that, first, thank you for everyone who's joining on for the first time. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and hit that bell so that you get a notification every time we drop a new episode, because we got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. The Guardian has published the results of an ongoing investigation that is exposing a subculture of men who are choosing to target women in the Dollar Tree store. They use tags like gooner, tagging, sharking, and essentially what they are doing is that they're going into these stores and they are self-indulging. Read between the lines because I got to be careful on these platforms before they do what? That. Okay, so I will be using platform appropriate verbiage, but please read between the lines. I'm going to try to make it as clear as possible. So they are self-indulging in these stores and are filming it to then be published on these private online subgroups. It is so disturbing that there are men who even think that this is okay. That's why I need y'all good gents out there to stand up and help us change this culture. Because why would you go into a dollar store, target a woman who's just going about her day, and decide that you are willing to assault her? And that's very important for people to know because these are not pranks. Please use the appropriate language when we talk about them, because I think as a society, we tend to soften what these issues are for whatever reason. And there's a lot of reasons we can all, I'm sure, think about. But the language is very important. And while I'm restricted right now to use the language I really want to use, essay is really what these things are. And it's important for these men to understand that this is essay. And if you are desiring to essay someone, then you got an issue that you have to solve. You have an issue that you need to go see somebody about because this is not normal. And while you're in groups of not normal people who are promoting essay cultures, it is important for you to know that there's a reason why this is the dark web, because what you are participating in is darkness, and we have to call it what it is. And it's unfortunate that these subgroups are continuing to, in some ways, prosper because while the internet allows us to do great things, depending on who the character of the person you are, the same tool can be used for something that's negative because of the character of the person. If you're not a dark person, you won't do dark things. If you're a person of light, you won't participate in dark things. And I will say that these are violent acts, and it's important for me to say that these are not actual acts, these are violent acts. So if you are participating in cultures that are promoting violence against women, please go get yourself some help immediately. Because not only is this not a win, this is not a trophy, this is disgusting. This is a very disgusting and dark act. And the fact that you would continue to participate in these acts is a problem. Let me speak to the sisters out there. So you may ask, what can I do to protect myself? And I'm not going to say not going into these stores because it is what it is. You got things to do, families to take care of. You're doing the right thing. And the problem is when these circumstances are turned around to say to women what we should do better, because we're not the problem. We are definitely not the problem. And however, because we can't fix these problems overnight, there are things that you can do to protect yourself. So they are seemingly targeting Dollar Tree stores. But in general, they're targeting stores that gives the opportunity. So what does that mean? So stores that have poor staffing, that do not have adequate security, and who have clutter. So the clutter allows them to hide, right? And unfortunately, when you think about these particular factors that make particular stores and companies more vulnerable, these are more likely to be, unfortunately, stores that are in underserved communities, less security or inadequate security, understaffing, clutter as a result of the understaffing, right? And these, unfortunately, are factors that have been found as a part of the investigation to be more likely to have these incidents occur. If you see something, say something. If you are a bystander, do not just bystand and film. Please say something. We have got to stop this surveillance society. The reason why we're heading into a surveillance state-ish, I gotta be careful what I say, is because we have built a culture where surveillance have become more easily acceptable. So when there is a violent act occurring, it's important that we do not just be standing by. It's important that we're just not bystanders. We have to be proactive about stopping these acts in our society. Now, what you do and how you address that is up to you. I'm not saying that you personally intervene. I'm saying perhaps you go get help. Perhaps you show that person a place of safety. I'm not encouraging you to put yourself in harm's way, just to be very clear, but there are other things we can do. Instead of filming, we can call the cops. Go and tell the employees. If there's security, get the attention of security. So definitely do things that protect your safety and the safety of others. So that being said, gentlemen, I know there are great men out there. Please help us to change these men's behavior. We need mentorship. We need identifying young men who are at risk. And the CDC, I don't know if it's still up because, things have changed. But before, the CDC did have a list of characteristics or a list of factors that would help you identify young men who are more likely to be at risk for becoming perpetrators. So go look at that list. And once you see the factors on that list, think about the young men in your community. Is there anyone who fits that pattern? If you can, take them under your wings, encourage them, help them not to participate in these subcultures of violence. And while we're talking about women, it is not just women that need protection. We also need to protect our girls. And while some people have some issues when you bring up the word migrants, it suddenly changes your morality and how you would protect other individuals. For those of you who still believe that all humanity deserves very basic things, safety, necessities, love, if nothing else, I need you to continue to pay attention. For everybody else, this may not be for you, because if you have a sudden visceral reaction to the word migrants and you feel that migrant individuals are somehow not worthy of these very basic humanity issues, I can't solve your problem. Take that up with God. For the rest of y'all, let's keep moving. So the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is what's going on in these detention facilities. Really, what is going on should be raising red flags for a number of reasons, but the reason I'm going to focus on today are the girls. Why are there so many pregnant girls in these detention centers? What is going on? And that just for me identifies the fact that there are perpetrators inside of these walls who are being paid by tax dollars to protect and to manage these, ideally to protect. And however, if nothing else, to manage these facilities, but most of all, not to become perpetrators and to victimize individuals who are in these detention facilities. Mind you, these detention facilities are very much for profit. So there are companies making money off of the tragedies that are happening. That has got to stop. But before I get into those details, I want to focus on letting you know what's really been going on. So there are dozens of young girls as early as the age of 13 that have been found to be pregnant in these facilities. And they say that about half of these are as a result of SA, grape. Okay. That is a problem because not only when you think about what you were doing at age 13 and 14 and 15 and 16, were you ready to have a child at that age? Probably not. Most of us were not. I would say almost all of us are not. Not just emotionally, not just psychologically, because the brain has not developed very well. At those age, you're not able to make complex decisions, really understand complex situations. Not only that, but the body of a 13-year-old is not ready to be pregnant. And wow, there are still states that allow child marriage in the US of A. That's a whole other situation. We need to address that because if there is child marriage being allowed in the states, then there are allowances for cultures like this. This is why people may not see a wrong in it because in their states, they can actually marry these kids. And I say kids specifically because when it comes to Black and Brown, as we have shared on this platform, adultification of Black and Brown girls is a problem because it's oftentimes what leads to these types of allowances that people don't have the same type of barriers or boundaries that they would have otherwise because of the consequences, not because they have an innate compass that allows them to make better moral decisions, but because of the consequences. Consequences oftentimes can be great deterrents. Now, it was said before that these girls were placed on an island. As far as I understand, they're not on an island. Wow, there's not much of a difference between secluding them in a shelter versus an island. That's a whole other situation. They're being sent to a shelter in the south of Texas, the San Benito shelter. Now, San Benito is a facility, is a shelter that is owned by a company called Urban Strategies. So if you need to go knock on their door and ask them what is going on, why are these girls pregnant, that's your business. Even worse, the fact that they are pregnant is the fact that they're not receiving the care that they need. It is important for people to know teenage pregnancy is a high-risk pregnancy. It is a pregnancy in a body that is not ready for a number of reasons. And because of that, they tend to be at increased risk for nutritional deficiencies, increased risk for birth difficulties and trauma, increased risk for hypertensive disorders like preeclampsia. It is very important that we understand that teenage pregnancy is not just a normal, average, low-risk pregnancy. These are automatically high-risk pregnancies and warrant specialty care. But they are not even receiving the bare minimum as far as what has been reported by several outlets. They are not getting sufficient nutrition, they're not getting the education they need, and they are not getting the care, certainly not the specialized care that they need to be safe. This is not for luxury. This is about safety. They are also more likely, just as they're more likely to become pregnant in these detention centers, there also have been showing higher rates of STIs. STIs have a number of consequences. Some are lifelong. Some can be very dangerous, especially if not adequately treated, and can impact a child's fertility, future fertility. Okay, so let's get into what also is going on when it comes to teenage pregnancies, because there was something in the news that got a lot of attention, and it's important for us to break that down a little bit more. So, some of you may have seen the promotions or the news blast that went out that for the first time, women who are 40 years and older are having a higher birth rate than teenage girls. Now, for many of us, this is something to be celebrated because for many of us, we understand the dangers of teenage pregnancies and we understand why women are choosing to have children at an older age. Many of them saying that it was the best decision that they have made, even though it's important for you to know as well that the 40-plus-year-olds are still the highest risk for adverse pregnancy outcomes. They have the highest mortality rate. They also have more complications like gestational diabetes, hypertensive disorders, labor dysfunction, and the list goes on. So, this is not a risk-free state. And please hear me well. Can women 40 years and older have wonderful, beautiful, safe deliveries? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can there be complications? Absolutely. Are complications higher? Absolutely. If you think about just even someone who's not pregnant, as you get older, these diabetes become more common, hypertension become more common. So it's not unusual that someone who is older, when they do become pregnant, are more likely to develop these adverse outcomes. It makes sense, right? The body ages. As the body ages, it encounters more issues. As the fertility is older, there are more likely to be mistakes that happen as things replicate, which is why miscarriages and chromosomal issues are more common in older women and pregnancies of older dads. It is just common sense. But when you look at who is more likely to be able to handle a pregnancy in general, I'm certain that most of us would say an older woman has the maturity, has the financial stability, and may even have the health knowledge to have a safer delivery or to be able to deal with pregnancy and raising a child. Whereas a teenager who themselves are still developing and growing are more likely to have complications as well because of their young age. So both groups are at risk, right? It's just who can handle it and who has the finances to be able to raise a child and deal with all of the things that come with that. A teenager is less likely to even have the maturity and the psychological development to deal with raising somebody else when they themselves are still being raised. The fact that we have had a major drop in teenage pregnancy is a win. This was one of my first campaigns when I became president of the American Medical Association. I targeted teenage pregnancy. So this is a topic that's dear to my heart and continues to be dear to my heart decades later. So as I said, the birth rate of teenage pregnancies have declined, while the birth rate of those who are 40 years and older have increased. And so for the first time, things have flipped. It is said that teenage pregnancies have declined by a rate of 120% since the 1990s. That is huge. If you look at most recent years, there has been a decline of 72% since 2017. These are remarkable wins. Now, unfortunately, not everyone believed that these are wins. And for whatever reason, the current administration has decided to pull back on grants that have been effective in reducing teenage pregnancies. So these are grants through public health organizations, these are grants through nonprofit, these are grants through private companies. So there has been a significant reduction in the number of grants that have been distributed with a change in focus from pregnancy prevention to marriage. What's really fascinating is the fact that this is not new. This has been tried before, and the outcomes have shown when you take away the education on pregnancy prevention, STIs, and giving people that type of knowledge, that the outcomes are not as good, that there are higher rates in circumstances where you're trying to teach and force marriage in some ways. Now, again, remember what I said, child marriage is still on the books in many states. So when you try to change the culture for young girls to focus on getting married, but you're not giving them the education on pregnancy prevention, STI prevention, the rates of pregnancies go up. That is a fact. This is not an idea, an ideology. This is a fact. It has been proven over and over again. It is important in the efforts of preventing teenage pregnancy to educate on pregnancy, bodies, STIs. It is the most effective way of doing it. 53 out of 67 grants have been canceled. This equates to a reduction in funding for these programs of 67 million. Again, to the tune of $67 million. That is a huge loss for a lot of these programs. Now, this is not the first time that this has been done. In this administration's, in this current president's first presidency, the same thing was done at that time. In fact, 80 grants were canceled before their 2-year expiration date. And the populations that will be most impacted will be those that are cared for by nonprofits, public health departments, and universities. Those are the populations that will feel it the most. Populations who have access to private funding will not feel the impact of this. So this ultimately will impact the most disadvantaged communities. So the highest rates of pregnancy, unfortunately, will likely be seen in communities of color. Now, that some people may argue may be the plan. I don't know. I'm just saying. Now, in the first presidency, when this was attempted, the Democracy Focus Group filed a lawsuit and won that lawsuit, providing an injunction on the decision. Now, the question is, who's going to stand up this time to make sure that these programs are adequately funded? And in fact, we're not talking about new funding. We're talking about allowing them to continue to receive the funding they had already been awarded before the expiration dates. So again, I recently posted I don't want to say news channel because it's not really it's not a news channel. We're very clear on that. But on a channel, a host of a program that's very highly viewed and popular, making fun of the supplementation of testosterone, the potential of the men who are receiving testosterone treatment in the military suddenly becoming extremely wild and lacking boundaries and self-control, resulting in an impact on the women on bases was referenced, but also comfort camps were referenced as well. And if you know anything about the comfort camps in Asian countries, they were not voluntary. And it is very well documented that these camps were held up in World War II, in Nazi Germany, okay? Were also held up in the imperial time period. So there's a long, very dark history about essays involving our military and involving these quote unquote comfort women camps. These are not jokes, but the fact that there are platforms that allow these statements to be made is what is propagating a culture that is lenient on individuals who are essaying women. I was watching a post recently where a young woman was walking down the street and she was being harassed by a young man. And not only did he spit on her, which by the way is a form, which by the way is against the law in many states and a form of battery and assault. But not only did he spit on her, but what really struck me in that video was that there was another guy who was jogging down the street. And you see for a second he paused, right? His morality got checked. And instead of in some ways intervening, he continues to jog away. There was another video I posted recently where a young lady was with a young man. Now, this one was staged, but was staged to show and to demonstrate the lack of support that women receive who are in DV relationships. So many people don't know the hand signal. Not only did she have a sticky that she was sticking on to people who were passing by that says help, but she would also behind her back do the hand signal, which would signal she's in need of being rescued. The men that she encountered in that video walked away. In matter of fact, one of them even seemed annoyed that she placed the sticky on his shoulder. He took it and he tossed it to the side like it was trash. Other men paused, just like the guy who was jogging, but they continued on and did not look back. It was a woman who stood up, saw the note, saw what was going on, and took a chance and ran and touched the girl and told her to come with her, despite the potential risk to her own self. And I know that people may be saying, I don't want to put myself in danger. And I get that. I'm not telling you to do what she did, but I'm telling you to do something. Men, a number of the men in the video were larger than the guy that was with the girl. They could have easily handled the situation. And again, I'm not telling them to do so. I'm just saying you're more powerful than you think you are. And there are a number of ways you can address it. You can call the cops. You can watch and monitor where they're going, keep track of them, stay on the phone with the cops, and just be discreet about it. There are so many ways, or just call the cops and describe who you saw, where they were going. And that's something. You don't have to do everything, but please do something. We got to stop this culture that is making a way for SA for women and girls. We have got to stop this together. That being said, again, thank you for joining on today. If this is your first time, you're so welcome to our platform. If you are a returning viewer, we thank you so much for hopping on today. I am Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club, right here on YouTube and healthybump.club on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't done so already, drop us a comment to let us know what you think about these topics. And two, don't forget to click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and click that bell so that you know when we do what? Drop the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has been informative. Let us do something together. I am Dr. T, and I'll see you in the next episode. And bye, y'all. Have a good one. This is Dr. T. Just a friendly reminder. Don't forget to comment, like, and share. And go ahead. Why not? Click that subscribe button. Help us to get to the next 1,000 subscribers. We thank you guys for supporting.